How can one reckless night at a party destroy a marriage in front of everyone who matters? What starts as a joke, me letting another man whisper in my ear, ends with a stack of legal papers on my kitchen table and my husband's steady eyes watching as I am forced to explain everything. Can I blame him for what comes next when all I did was dance, and he was the one who made it public? The music pulsed through the downtown event hall as I adjusted my black dress for the third time, checking my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Ottilie Vane, 32 years old, office administrator at Hartwell Insurance, mother of one, wife of 8 years. Tonight, I wanted to be someone else entirely. The company holiday party was in full swing when I emerged from the restroom. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over clusters of my co-workers, all dressed up and pretending we weren't the same people who argued over printer paper and coffee supplies every Monday morning. I grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and surveyed the room. Caleb wasn't supposed to be here. He'd texted earlier saying he had to work late on some data analysis project. Again. Always working, always buried in spreadsheets and numbers while I handled everything else. Nate's homework, the grocery shopping, the parent-teacher conferences, the endless stream of household responsibilities that somehow became invisible to him. "You look amazing tonight, Ottilie." The voice came from behind me, smooth and confident. I turned to find Rafe Moreno, the event promoter the company had hired for tonight's party. He was younger than me, maybe 29, with dark hair and the kind of easy smile that made you forget your own name. "Thank you," I said, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. When was the last time Caleb had complimented how I looked? I couldn't remember. "I've been watching you all evening," Rafe continued, stepping closer. "You have this energy about you, like you're meant for bigger things than this place." The champagne made me bold. "What makes you think I'm not already living my best life?" He laughed, a rich sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Because I recognize someone who's been playing it safe for too long. Someone who deserves to feel alive again." The words hit deeper than they should have. When had I stopped feeling alive? When had my life become this predictable cycle of work, home, sleep, repeat? I took another sip of champagne and let myself really look at him. "Dance with me," he said, extending his hand. I hesitated for exactly 3 seconds before taking it. The dance floor was crowded, bodies pressed close together in the dim lighting. Rafe's hands found my waist, and I let him pull me against him as we moved to the music. "Your husband's a lucky man," he murmured in my ear, his breath warm against my neck. "He's working," I said, louder than necessary. "He's always working." "Then he's an idiot for leaving you alone tonight." The validation felt like oxygen after holding my breath for years. Here was someone who saw me, really saw me, not just as Caleb's wife, or Nate's mother, or the woman who organized the office supply closet. I was desirable. I was worth pursuing. My phone buzzed in my purse, a text from my sister Lydia. "Saw your Instagram story. Looking good, but maybe tone it down a bit." I ignored it and posted another photo. Rafe's arm around my waist, both of us laughing at something he'd whispered. The caption read, "Finally letting loose, while living my best life on company party." "You're trouble," I told Rafe as he spun me around. "The best kind," he replied, dipping me low. When he pulled me back up, his face was inches from mine. That's when I saw him. Caleb stood 15 feet away, holding my winter coat, his expression unreadable. Our eyes met across the dance floor, and time seemed to stop. How long had he been there? How much had he seen? He looked tired, still wearing his work clothes, khakis and a button-down shirt that had seen better days. His brown hair was slightly mussed, probably from running his hands through it while staring at computer screens. At 35, he was still handsome in that quiet, understated way that had attracted me in college, but tonight he looked older somehow, worn down. Rafe followed my gaze and tensed slightly. "That him?" I nodded, unable to speak. Caleb walked slowly toward us, weaving between dancing couples. When he reached the edge of the dance floor, he simply laid my coat on an empty chair. "Caleb," I started, but he was already turning away. He walked back through the crowd with the same measured pace, not hurrying, not looking back. I watched him disappear through the exit, and something cold settled in my stomach. "Guess the party's over," Rafe said, but he didn't sound particularly concerned. "No," I said quickly, gripping his hand tighter. "It's not. He's the one who chose not to be here. He's the one who's never here." But even as I said it, I could feel the eyes of my co-workers on us. Priya Shah, my manager, was staring from across the room with the expression I couldn't quite read. A few other colleagues had noticed the interaction and were whispering among themselves. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Caleb. "Left your coat on the chair by the dance floor. Drive safe." That was it. No anger, no accusations, no demands that I come home immediately. Just practical concern for my safety, which somehow made it worse. "Everything okay?" Rafe asked, still holding me close. "Perfect," I lied, forcing a smile. "Let's get another drink." But the magic was broken. For the rest of the evening, I went through the motions of having fun, laughing too loudly at Rafe's jokes, posting more photos to social media, accepting compliments from co-workers who'd had too much to drink. All the while, I kept thinking about Caleb's face in that moment when our eyes met. Not angry, not hurt, just resigned, as if he'd been expecting this. When the party finally ended at midnight, Rafe walked me to my car. "This was fun," he said, leaning against my door. "We should do it again sometime." "I'm married," I said, though the words felt hollow. "Doesn't mean you have to be miserable," he replied, then kissed my cheek before walking away. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before starting the engine, dreading the drive home. What would I say to Caleb? How would I explain what he'd seen? More importantly, how would I explain what I'd felt? The house was dark when I pulled into our driveway. Caleb's car was there, but all the lights were off except for the porch light he'd left on for me. I let myself in quietly, expecting him to be waiting up, ready for a confrontation. Instead, I found a note on the kitchen counter. "Nate's asleep. I'm in the guest room tonight. We'll talk tomorrow." I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, then immediately retrieved it and smoothed it out. Something about his handwriting looked different, more careful, more deliberate, as if he'd thought about every word. Upstairs, I checked on Nate, who was sleeping peacefully in his race car bed, completely unaware that his parents' marriage might have fundamentally shifted tonight. At 7 years old, he still believed his daddy could fix anything, and his mommy was the most beautiful woman in the world. I stood in our bedroom doorway, looking at the empty bed Caleb and I had shared for 8 years. The guest room door was closed, and I could see the thin line of light underneath it. He was awake, probably staring at the ceiling, thinking about what he'd witnessed. Part of me wanted to knock on that door, to apologize and explain that it didn't mean anything, that I'd just had too much to drink and gotten carried away. But a bigger part of me was still angry. Angry that he'd shown up unannounced. Angry that he'd made me feel guilty for having fun. Angry that he'd left without giving me a chance to explain. I changed into my pajamas and got into our bed alone, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Caleb's face, and underneath the resignation, I thought I'd glimpsed something else, something that looked like disappointment so deep it had turned into something harder. My phone lit up with notifications, likes and comments on the photos I'd posted throughout the evening. Most were harmless, friends saying I looked great or asking who the cute guy was. But there were a few that made my stomach clench. "Girl, you know your husband follows your Instagram, right?" From my college roommate. "Might want to delete this before Caleb sees it," from another friend. And then, at 2 a.m., a comment from someone I didn't recognize. "Saw your husband leave the party early. Guess he got the message." I deleted that comment immediately, but it was too late. The damage was already spreading through social media, through the network of people who knew us both. By morning, everyone would know that Ottilie Vane had been caught flirting with another man while her husband watched. I finally fell asleep around 3 a.m., and when I woke up at 7, the guest room door was already open and Caleb was gone. His car wasn't in the driveway and there was no note this time. Just the lingering scent of his cologne and the feeling that something irreversible had been set in motion. I woke up with a pounding headache and the immediate memory of Caleb's face at the party crashing over me like a wave. Sunlight streamed through our bedroom windows, and I could hear Nate's cartoons playing downstairs. The guest room door stood open, bed neatly made, no sign that my husband had spent the night there. Checking my phone, I found a text from Caleb sent at 6 a.m. Took Nate to breakfast. Back around 10, we need to talk. It was 9:30. I had 30 minutes to figure out how to handle this conversation. But first, I needed coffee and a shower to wash away the lingering guilt that clung to my skin like smoke. Under the hot water, I rehearsed different approaches. I could apologize profusely, claim the alcohol made me act out of character. I could go on the offensive, point out that he was never around anyway, that I deserved to have fun. Or I could try to minimize it. It was just dancing, just harmless flirtation. Nothing actually happened. But as I dried my hair, I kept seeing that moment when our eyes met across the dance floor. The way he'd simply set down my coat and walked away without a scene, without demanding explanations. It was so typically Caleb, measured, controlled, thinking before reacting. It should have been reassuring, but instead it felt ominous. My phone was buzzing constantly with notifications. The photos from last night had generated more attention than anything I'd posted in months. Most of the comments were positive, friends saying I looked amazing, asking where I'd bought my dress, wondering who the handsome man was. But there were others that made my chest tighten. "Is that your husband?" asked my neighbor Carol, commenting on the photo of Rafe and me dancing. "Doesn't look like Caleb," replied someone else. I started deleting comments and untagging myself from photos other people had posted, but it felt like trying to stop a flood with my bare hands. The internet never forgot, and screenshots lived forever. At exactly 10 a.m., I heard Caleb's car in the driveway. Through the living room window, I watched him help Nate out of his booster seat, both of them carrying McDonald's bags. They were laughing about something, and the normalcy of it made my throat tight. "Mommy!" Nate burst through the front door, his face sticky with syrup. "Daddy got me pancakes and we saw a fire truck and the fireman let me sit in it." "That sounds amazing, sweetheart," I said, hugging him close and breathing in his little boy scent of maple syrup and shampoo. Caleb followed more slowly, his expression neutral. "I got you coffee," he said, holding out a cup from my favorite cafe. "Vanilla latte, extra shot." The gesture was so thoughtful, so normal, that it almost broke me. "Thank you," I whispered. "Nate, why don't you go wash your hands and then you can watch another cartoon?" Caleb suggested. Our son bounded upstairs, completely oblivious to the tension crackling between his parents. Caleb waited until we heard the bathroom door close before he spoke again. "So," he said quietly, leaning against the kitchen counter, "how was the rest of your evening?" I'd prepared for anger, accusations, demands for explanations. I hadn't prepared for this calm, almost clinical tone. "Caleb, I can explain." "Can you?" He pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. It was my Instagram account, specifically the photo of Rafe and me dancing, his hands on my waist, both of us laughing. Because from where I stood, it looked pretty self-explanatory. "It wasn't what it looked like," I said, the words sounding weak even to me. "What was it then, Ottilie? Help me understand what I saw." I hated when he used that tone, patient, reasonable, like he was trying to solve a problem at work. It made me feel like a child being gently corrected. "I was having fun," I said, my voice rising slightly. "Remember fun? That thing we used to have before you became married to your job?" Something flickered in his eyes. So, this is my fault. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. He set his coffee down and looked directly at me. Ottilie, I came to the party to surprise you. I finished my project early and thought we could have a nice evening together. Instead, I found my wife in another man's arms, posting photos for everyone we know to see. We were just dancing. Were you? He swiped to another photo, one where Rafe was whispering in my ear, his lips almost touching my neck. I didn't even remember someone taking that picture. Because this looks like more than dancing to me. My phone buzzed with a text, then another, and another. Caleb glanced at it. Popular morning. I grabbed the phone, scanning the messages. Most were from friends asking about last night, but one made my blood run cold. It was from Priya, my manager. Ottilie, we need to discuss appropriate professional conduct. Please see me first thing Monday morning. Everything okay? Caleb asked, though his tone suggested he already knew it wasn't. It's nothing, I lied, but my hands were shaking as I set the phone down. Mommy, Daddy, come see this. Nate called from the living room, and we both went to him, grateful for the interruption. For the next hour, we maintained a facade of normalcy for our son's sake. We watched cartoons, played with his action figures, made lunch together, but underneath it all, I could feel Caleb watching me with those careful, analytical eyes, like he was gathering data for some report I didn't want to read. Around noon, my sister Lydia called. We need to talk, she said without preamble. I'm kind of in the middle of something. Ottilie, I saw the photos. Everyone saw the photos. What were you thinking? I stepped onto the back porch for privacy, leaving Caleb and Nate building a fort out of couch cushions. It wasn't a big deal, Lydia. People are making it into something it wasn't. Really? Because Mom called me this morning, asking why her daughter-in-law was all over social media with some guy who isn't her husband. My mother-in-law. I'd forgotten that Miriam followed my Instagram account. Oh, God. Yeah, oh, God is right. She's furious, Ottilie. And honestly, I don't blame her. Whose side are you on here? I'm on the side of not destroying your marriage over some party boy, Lydia snapped. Do you have any idea how good you have it with Caleb? He's devoted to you and Nate. He works his ass off to provide for your family, and this is how you repay him. He's never here, I protested. He works constantly. He barely talks to me anymore. We haven't been on a real date in months. So you decided to have a date with someone else? In public? Where everyone could see? The words hit like a slap. It wasn't a date. Then what was it, Ottilie? Because from the outside, it looked like a married woman cheating on her husband. I hung up on her, my hands trembling with anger and something that might have been shame. Through the sliding glass door, I could see Caleb helping Nate arrange pillows in their fort, both of them completely absorbed in the task. They looked so much alike in profile. The same serious expression, the same careful attention to detail. When I came back inside, Caleb glanced up from the fort. Everything okay with Lydia? Fine, I said curtly. He nodded, but I caught him looking at his own phone, typing something quickly before putting it away. Who was he texting? He never texted during family time. The rest of the day passed in a strange, tense normalcy. We took Nate to the park, went grocery shopping, made dinner together. But there was a distance between Caleb and me that hadn't been there before, like we were actors playing the roles of husband and wife rather than actually being them. That evening, after Nate was in bed, I found Caleb in his home office, laptop open, surrounded by papers. Working again, I asked, trying to keep the accusation out of my voice. Just organizing some things, he said without looking up. I moved closer and saw that he wasn't working on data analysis. Instead, his screen showed bank statements, insurance documents, tax returns. What's all this? Household finances, he said simply, making sure everything's in order. Something cold settled in my stomach. Why now? Finally, he looked at me. Because I think we need to have some serious conversations about our future, Ottilie. And before we do that, I want to understand exactly where we stand financially. You're scaring me. Good, he said quietly, because I'm scared too. That night, he slept in the guest room again. I lay in our bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day's conversations, Lydia's angry words, Priya's ominous text, Caleb's careful inventory of our assets. Around midnight, I heard him get up and go to the kitchen. When he didn't come back after 20 minutes, I crept downstairs and found him sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop and a legal pad, writing notes by hand. Caleb, what are you doing? He looked up, and in the dim light from the laptop screen, his face looked older than his 35 years. I'm trying to figure out how we got here, Ottilie, and more importantly, where we go from here. It was just one night, one mistake. Was it though? He gestured to his computer screen, which showed my Instagram account. Because looking at your posts from the past few months, this doesn't seem like an isolated incident. It seems like you've been building up to something. I looked at the screen and saw my own social media presence through his eyes. Increasingly frequent posts about needing me time, complaints about being unappreciated, photos of nights out with friends where I looked progressively more desperate for attention and validation. I've been unhappy, I admitted. I know, he said simply. The question is, what are we going to do about it? But I didn't have an answer, and from the look on his face, I was starting to suspect that Caleb did. Monday morning arrived with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. I'd barely slept, spending most of Sunday night refreshing social media and watching the photos from Friday's party spread through our social circle like wildfire. By the time my alarm went off, I had 17 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize and 43 new Instagram followers, most of whom seemed to be friends of friends who'd heard about the drama. Caleb was already gone when I woke up. No note this time, just the lingering scent of his coffee and the impression of his body on the guest room sheets. He'd left early every morning since the party, claiming he had projects to catch up on, but I suspected he was avoiding me. At Hartwell Insurance, the whispers started the moment I walked through the door. Conversation stopped mid-sentence when I passed, and I caught co-workers glancing at their phones and then at me, with expressions ranging from curiosity to judgment. Priya's office door was open, and she gestured for me to come in immediately. Close the door, she said, not looking up from her computer screen. Sit down. I'd worked for Priya for 3 years, and she'd always been professional, but fair. Today, her voice carried a chill I'd never heard before. I'm going to be direct, Ottilie. Over the weekend, several employees and clients forwarded me photos from Friday night's party. Photos of you in what can only be described as a compromising position with our event coordinator. Priya, I can explain. She held up a hand. I'm not finished. Our company has a strict policy about professional conduct, both during work hours and at work-sponsored events. What happened Friday night reflects poorly on Hartwell Insurance and puts us in a difficult position. My mouth went dry. Are you firing me? Not yet, but you're on notice. Any further incidents that bring negative attention to this company, and we'll have to discuss your continued employment here. She finally looked at me directly. Ottilie, I've always liked you. You're organized, reliable, good with clients. But I can't protect you if you keep making choices that affect our professional reputation. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of humiliation. Every phone call felt like the person on the other end had seen the photos. Every client meeting included awkward pauses, where I wondered if they were picturing me in Rafe's arms. During lunch, I escaped to my car and called the one person I thought might understand. Rafe, it's Ottilie. Hey, beautiful. How are you holding up? His voice was warm, concerned, and hearing it made me feel slightly less alone. Not great. My boss basically threatened to fire me. My husband isn't speaking to me, and half the internet seems to have seen us dancing. That's rough. Want to meet up and talk about it? I know a quiet place downtown. I should have said no. Every rational part of my brain was screaming that meeting him would only make things worse. But I was tired of being rational, tired of being the responsible wife and mother who never did anything for herself. Okay, I said. Where? He gave me the address of a rooftop bar in the Arts District, the kind of place that was trendy and expensive and nothing like anywhere Caleb would ever think to look for me. I spent the rest of the workday in a haze of anticipation and guilt. At 5 o'clock, instead of going home to help Nate with homework and make dinner, I drove downtown to meet another man. The rooftop bar was exactly as I'd imagined, sleek and sophisticated, with a view of the city skyline and the kind of cocktail menu where everything cost $18. Rafe was already there, sitting at a corner table, looking effortlessly handsome in dark jeans and a leather jacket. You came, he said, standing to kiss my cheek. The gesture felt intimate, dangerous. I shouldn't be here, I said, but I sat down anyway. He ordered us drinks, something with gin and elderflower that tasted like expensive bad decisions. So, tell me about your day. I found myself spilling everything. The meeting with Priya, the stares and whispers at work, Caleb's cold distance, my sister's disapproval. Rafe listened with the kind of focused attention I hadn't received from anyone in months. Sounds like everyone's being pretty harsh, he said when I finished. We danced at a party. We didn't rob a bank. That's what I keep trying to tell them. Maybe the problem isn't what you did. Maybe the problem is that you're married to someone who doesn't appreciate what he has. The words were exactly what I wanted to hear. Validation for all the resentment I'd been carrying. He used to appreciate me. When we were dating, in the early years of our marriage, he made me feel special. But somewhere along the way, I became just another item on his to-do list. You deserve better than that, Rafe said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are. We talked for 2 hours, and with each drink, the situation at home seemed less important, and the man across from me seemed more appealing. He told me about his work in event planning, his travels, his dreams of opening his own venue. He made me laugh, made me feel interesting and desirable and alive. I should go, I said, around 7:30, but I made no move to leave. Should you? He moved his chair closer to mine. Or should you do what makes you happy for once? His hand was on my knee now, and I didn't move it away. Around us, other couples were lost in their own conversations, their own romantic bubbles. For a moment, I let myself imagine what it would be like to be free, to be with someone who chose to be with me instead of someone who was stuck with me. Then my phone rang. Caleb's name on the screen shattered the fantasy. I have to take this, I said, stepping away from the table. Where are you? Caleb's voice was tight with worry. Nate's been asking for you. I told him you had to work late, but it's almost 8 o'clock. I had to run an errand. I'll be home soon. Ottilie, where are you? I could hear Nate in the background asking if Mommy was coming home for bedtime stories. The sound of his voice cut through the gin and the fantasy and the validation like a knife. I'm on my way, I said, hanging up before Caleb could ask more questions. When I returned to the table, Rafe was scrolling through his phone. Everything okay? I have to go, my son needs me. He nodded, but as I gathered my purse, he caught my hand. This doesn't have to be goodbye, you know. You have my number. I drove home with the windows down, trying to clear my head and get rid of the smell of gin and Rafe's cologne. But I couldn't shake the feeling of his hand on mine, the way he'd looked at me, like I was the most fascinating woman in the room. The house was quiet when I got home. I found Caleb in the living room, reading on his laptop, while some nature documentary played softly on the TV. Where's Nate? I asked. Asleep. He waited as long as he could for his bedtime story. Caleb's voice was carefully neutral, but I caught the edge of disappointment underneath. I'm sorry, I got held up. Doing what? The question hung in the air between us. I could lie, make up some story about grocery shopping or stopping by Lydia's house. But something in his expression told me he already knew I was lying. "I had a drink with a friend," I said finally. "What friend?" I couldn't meet his eyes. "Just someone from work." Caleb closed his laptop and looked at me directly. "Ottilie, I need you to understand something. I'm trying very hard to be patient here, to give you space to figure out what you want, but I won't be made a fool of." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means that if you want to end our marriage, have the courage to say so. Don't sneak around having drinks with mystery friends and force me to play detective." "I'm not trying to end our marriage." "Then what are you trying to do? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're trying to have it both ways. The security of being married and the excitement of being single." His words stung because they were true. "Maybe I just need some time to figure things out." "How much time, Ottilie? Because Nate asked me tonight why Mommy doesn't live here anymore. He's 7 years old and he's already noticing that something's wrong." The mention of our son made my chest tight with guilt. "I do live here." "Do you? Because you've been staying out later, coming home with excuses, posting photos that suggest you'd rather be anywhere but here with us." He stood up, suddenly looking exhausted. "I love you, Ottilie. I've loved you since we were 24 years old, but I won't compete with whoever's making you feel like this marriage is a prison sentence." He started toward the stairs, then turned back. "Oh, and your sister called. She wants to have brunch with you tomorrow. Something about a family conversation that can't wait." After he went upstairs, I sat in the living room, replaying the evening. The warmth of Rafe's attention, the thrill of feeling desired, the guilt of lying to my husband and disappointing my son. I was caught between two worlds, and I was starting to realize that I might lose both. My phone buzzed with a text from Rafe. "Thanks for tonight. Hope we can do it again soon." I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it, but not before I noticed that just seeing his name on my screen made my heart race in a way that Caleb's texts hadn't in years. Upstairs, I could hear Caleb moving around in the guest room, and I wondered how long he planned to sleep there. How long I could keep pretending that everything was fine while my marriage slowly disintegrated around me. The answer, I was beginning to suspect, was not much longer. Tuesday morning brought a text from Lydia that made my stomach drop. "Brunch at Cafe Luna at 11 a.m. We need to talk. This isn't optional." I knew that tone, even in text form. My older sister had used it when we were kids, and she'd caught me doing something stupid, and she was using it now because she'd caught me doing something stupid as an adult. Cafe Luna was one of those trendy brunch spots downtown where everything came on mason jar lids and cost twice what it should. More importantly, it was public enough that Lydia probably figured I wouldn't make a scene. She was wrong about that. I arrived 10 minutes late, hoping to find her already seated and caffeinated enough to be reasonable. Instead, I found her pacing outside the restaurant, her expression somewhere between disappointed and furious. "Finally," she said when she saw me. "Do you have any idea what kind of week I've had because of your little performance on Friday?" "Good morning to you too, Lydia." "Don't." She held up a hand as we walked inside. "Don't do that thing where you deflect with humor. This is serious." We were seated at a table by the window, which meant everyone walking by on the sidewalk could see us. Lydia ordered coffee and avocado toast. I ordered a mimosa, which earned me a look that could have melted steel. "It's 11 in the morning, Ottilie. It's been a rough few days." "And whose fault is that?" The server brought our drinks, and I took a large sip of my mimosa before answering. "Look, I know you're upset." "Upset?" Lydia's voice rose enough that the couple at the next table glanced over. "Ottilie, Mum called me crying on Sunday night. Crying. Because her friends from church saw your Instagram photos and asked her if her daughter was having an affair." The mimosa turned to acid in my stomach. "I'm not having an affair." "Really? Because there are about 50 photos on social media that suggest otherwise." "We danced. We had drinks. That's not an affair." "You had drinks?" Lydia leaned forward. "When?" Where? I realized my mistake immediately, but it was too late to take it back. It was nothing, just one drink to talk about what happened at the party. Oh my God. Lydia sat back in her chair like I'd slapped her. You're still seeing him. After everything that happened Friday night, after Caleb found out, after your marriage nearly imploded, you're still seeing him. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is, Ottilie. Explain to me how having secret drinks with the man you were all over at a party is anything other than what it looks like. Our food arrived, but neither of us touched it. The server seemed to sense the tension and retreated quickly. I'm unhappy, Lydia. The words came out quieter than I'd intended. I've been unhappy for a long time, and nobody seems to care about that. Everyone's so concerned about appearances and what people will think, but nobody's asking why I felt the need to have fun with someone else in the first place. So this is Caleb's fault? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. You're doing that thing you've always done, making yourself the victim when you're the one who screwed up. Her words stung because they echoed what Caleb had said, what Priya had implied, what the little voice in my head kept whispering, but I wasn't ready to admit that yet. Caleb hasn't paid attention to me in months, I said defensively. We never go out. We never talk about anything except schedules and bills. We haven't been intimate in... Stop. Lydia held up her hand. I don't want to hear about your sex life. What I want to hear is that you're going to stop this nonsense and fight for your marriage. What if I don't want to fight for it anymore? The question hung between us like a bomb waiting to explode. Lydia stared at me for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was deadly quiet. Then you're a fool, Ottilie. You have a husband who loves you, a beautiful son, a nice home, financial security. You have everything most women dream of, and you're willing to throw it away for what? Some guy who plans parties for a living? He makes me feel alive. He makes you feel like a teenager. There's a difference. Lydia picked up her coffee with shaking hands. Do you know what Caleb told me when he called yesterday? My blood went cold. He called you? He wanted my address, said he needed to send me some important documents related to you and Nate. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. These arrived by courier this morning. I stared at the envelope like it was a snake. What is it? I don't know. I didn't open it because it's addressed to me, but it's about your family. She slid it across the table. But I have a feeling you're not going to like what's inside. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Inside were photocopies of bank statements, insurance policies, and what looked like a preliminary custody agreement. There was also a note in Caleb's careful handwriting. Lydia, I'm hoping you can talk some sense into your sister before this goes any further. If not, I want you to know that I'll always consider you family, regardless of what happens between Ottilie and me. Please know that my primary concern is Nate's well-being. Caleb. The papers blurred as tears filled my eyes. He's actually going to divorce me. What did you think was going to happen? Lydia's voice was gentler now, but still firm. Did you think he was going to sit quietly while you had your midlife crisis? Caleb's a good man, Ottilie, but he's not a doormat. I thought about the guest room, about his careful questions, about the way he'd been documenting our finances. He hadn't been planning to fight for our marriage. He'd been planning to end it. I need to call him, I said, fumbling for my phone. No. Lydia reached across the table and grabbed my wrist. You need to think. Really think about what you want. Because once you make this choice, there's no going back. Caleb's not the type to forgive and forget. If you choose that party planner over your family, it's going to be permanent. I stared down at the custody agreement, seeing Nate's name in black and white, seeing weekends and holidays divided up like assets. I never wanted this. Then stop it. End whatever this thing is with Rafe, go home to your husband and fix your marriage. But even as she said it, I was thinking about the way Rafe had looked at me yesterday, the way he'd made me feel beautiful and interesting and free. Could I really go back to the quiet desperation of my marriage after tasting that kind of excitement? My phone buzzed with a text from Rafe. Thinking about you. Hope your day is going better than yesterday. Lydia saw me reading it. Is that him? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Delete it, she said. Right now, delete that message and block his number. Instead, I found myself typing back. Can we meet tonight? I need someone to talk to. His response came immediately. Of course. Same place as yesterday. Ottilie, no. Lydia grabbed for my phone, but I pulled it away. Don't do this. Don't throw your life away. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm finally choosing myself for once. You're choosing a fantasy over reality. That man doesn't love you. He barely knows you. He's just enjoying the thrill of seducing a married woman. But I was already standing up, gathering my purse and the envelope full of legal documents. I have to go. If you leave here to meet him, I'm calling Caleb, Lydia said. I won't watch you destroy your family without trying to stop you. Then don't watch, I replied, and walked out of the restaurant. But as I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at the custody agreement and thinking about Nate asking why Mommy doesn't live here anymore, I realized that I might already be too late to stop the destruction I'd set in motion. My phone rang. It was Caleb. We need to talk, he said without preamble. Tonight, after Nate goes to bed. Caleb, I know Lydia showed you the papers. I know you're probably angry or scared or both, but we need to discuss this like adults, for Nate's sake, if nothing else. I thought about my plans to meet Rafe, about the choice I was facing. Okay, tonight. Good, I'll be home by 7. After he hung up, I sat in the parking lot for another 10 minutes, staring at my phone and thinking about the two paths stretching out in front of me. One led back to my husband and the hard work of rebuilding our marriage. The other led to Rafe and the intoxicating possibility of starting over. I chose Rafe, but as I drove toward downtown and whatever consequences awaited me there, I couldn't shake the image of Nate's face when he asked why Daddy sleeps in the other room. Some choices, I was beginning to understand, couldn't be undone. I met Rafe at the rooftop bar, but the city lights now felt harsh, the cocktails bitter with regret. He sat at our usual table, scrolling his phone, attention already drifting. You look stressed, he said without looking up. I am. My husband's filing for divorce. I spread the custody papers on the table. This is what my sister showed me today. Rafe glanced at them briefly, like a menu he wouldn't order from. That's heavy. What are you going to do? I thought, maybe you'd have advice. He finally set his phone down. Ottilie, I'm 29. I plan parties. I've never been married, never had kids. This, he gestured at the documents, isn't my territory. The truth landed cold. The charm, the flattery, the late-night texts. They'd been fun, temporary, disposable. So what was this? I asked quietly. All of it. Fun, he said simply. You needed it. I was happy to provide it, but I never promised more. You said I deserved better than my marriage. You do. Doesn't mean I'm it. He leaned back. Maybe go home. Work things out with your husband. The dismissal was effortless, devastating. I'd risked everything. My marriage, my son's stability, my sister's trust, for a man who saw me as a fleeting distraction. I left without goodbye. In the elevator, the mirror showed a 32-year-old woman carrying divorce papers, dressed up for someone who'd already moved on. At home, Caleb waited in the dark kitchen, laptop open, coffee cold. How was your evening? He asked, voice neutral. He knew. Lydia had called him. I sank into the chair. I saw Rafe, and he made it clear I'm on my own. Caleb looked at me, calm, sad, finished. You chose him 3 times. 3 times you could have come home. You didn't. I was unhappy, I whispered. I felt invisible. So you chose visibility somewhere else instead of talking to me. The words cut because they were true. I'm sorry, I said. I know. He stood. But sorry doesn't rebuild trust. We're getting divorced. Quietly, fairly, for Nate's sake. I'll move out this weekend. 50-50 custody. You keep the house. Caleb, please. No. The word was gentle but final. I can't keep wondering. I can't live waiting for the next time someone else's attention feels more important than ours. He walked upstairs. I sat alone, staring at the custody papers that would divide my son's life into weekends and weekdays. My phone buzzed. Lydia. I hope you made the right choice tonight. If not, live with it. I would have to. I'd wanted to feel alive again. Instead, I learned that some thrills cost everything, and the emptiness that follows is the real price. The next 2 weeks dissolved into consultations, strained explanations, and the slow unraveling of the life I'd taken for granted. Caleb moved into a furnished apartment across town, taking only his clothes and books, leaving me in a house that echoed with absence. We told Nate together on a Saturday morning. He sat between us on the couch, action figures forgotten, as we explained Daddy would live somewhere else now. But why? He asked, eyes wide. Did I do something bad? No, baby, I whispered, pulling him close. You did nothing wrong. Sometimes grown-ups can't fix things, but will always love you. He nodded, practical even at 7. Will I still have my room at both houses? Always, Caleb promised. The divorce moved swiftly. Caleb's preparations were meticulous, every asset tracked, every interaction documented. My lawyer reviewed the thick file of social media screenshots, party photos, witness statements, and suggested I accept the terms: 50-50 custody, the house mine, fair division. I wasn't having an affair, I said. The court cares about appearance and impact, she replied. He's been generous. Fight, and you'll likely get less. I signed. The social fallout was brutal. Couple friends chose Caleb, the wronged husband. At work, Priya and HR cited professional liability from the viral photos. I was let go with a neutral reference. Nate's school felt like walking through judgment every drop-off. Parents whispered, avoided eye contact. 3 weeks later, the final hearing lasted 20 minutes. Irretrievably broken, the judge said. Divorce granted. Outside, Caleb approached. How are you holding up? I've been better. He looked tired but calm. I hope you find what you're looking for, Ottilie. I thought I already had it, I said. I just didn't know until it was gone. He nodded and walked away. That evening, Rafe called to invite me to a party. Celebrate your freedom. I deleted his number instead. 6 months later, I worked reception at a dental office, lived paycheck to paycheck, and shared custody with Caleb. Nate adjusted, but clung tighter, asked careful questions about love. Caleb dated a kind kindergarten teacher. When I met her at a soccer game, she was polite, distant. I stood on those courthouse steps in memory often, watching the woman in the party photos, laughing, desired alive, oblivious to the cost. I'd wanted to feel seen. Instead, I learned some feelings demand too high a price. Some lessons arrive only through loss, and some losses last forever.